Well, friends, that was quick. Did Donald Trump already violate the newly expanded gag order issued by New York State Court Judge Juan Merchan? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, did Donald Trump already violate the newly expanded gag order that New York State Court Judge Juan Merchan just put in place? You'll recall that Judge Merchan is the one who's presiding over Donald Trump's first criminal trial that is scheduled to kick off April 15th. It's a state court case being tried in New York. This is for Donald Trump interfering in the 2016 presidential election by making hush money payments and then criminally falsifying business records to cover up the true nature of those hush money payments. And if Donald Trump did already violate the gag order, really the most important question is, what will Judge Merchan do about it? As always, let's start with the new reporting. This from Newsweek. Headline: Donald Trump may have already violated expanded gag order. And that article begins, Donald Trump may have violated the gag order in his hush money criminal trial after the judge expanded it to declare his family off limits, a former federal prosecutor said. Ron Filipkowski, a former prosecutor and the editor-in-chief of the liberal outlet Midas Touch, wrote on social media Tuesday that Trump had violated the order by sharing a clip from Fox News on his Truth Social platform. Quote, Trump violates his gag order this morning by posting a clip of Brian Kilmeade repeating the same fake story about a fake social media account supposedly from the judge's daughter that led to the gag order being extended, Filipkowski wrote on Twitter. New York State Supreme Court Justice Juan Merchan expanded the week-old gag order Monday evening to include prohibitions on Trump making statements about his family and that of the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, who requested the move on March 29th. Okay, friends, first, let's have a look at the expanded gag order that Judge Merchan issued on Monday. And then let's take a look at the New York State law. In other words, what are the possible consequences of Trump violating the gag order? In the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald Trump, defendant, here's what Judge Merchan prohibited. Making or directing others to make public statements about, 1, counsel in the case other than the district attorney, 2, members of the court's staff and the district attorney's staff, or 3, the family members of any counsel, staff member, the court, or the district attorney, if those statements are made with the intent to materially interfere with or to cause others to materially interfere with counsel's or staff's work in the criminal case, or with the knowledge that such interference is likely to result. And Judge Merchan concludes his order by saying, further, defendant is hereby warned that any violation of this order will result in sanctions under judiciary law, sections 750A3 and 751. Okay, friends, so let's have a look at those provisions of the New York law. Let's start with New York Judiciary Law 750A3. It provides, a court of record has power to punish for a criminal contempt a person guilty of any of the following acts. Subsection 3, willful disobedience to its lawful mandate, and violating the court's gag order would certainly qualify as willful disobedience to the court's lawful mandate. Okay? So now let's turn to Section 751. That reads, punishment for a contempt specified in Section 750 may be by fine not exceeding $1,000 or by imprisonment not exceeding 30 days. $1,000 doesn't mean squat to Donald Trump, but you think 30 days cooling his heels in a jail cell in an orange jumpsuit might catch his attention? So there's one more important qualifier that we're going to want to discuss. That is as follows. Such a contempt committed in the immediate view and presence of the court may be punished summarily. When not so committed, the party charged must be notified of the accusation and have a reasonable time to make a defense. Okay, friends, now that we've unpacked it, let's put it all back together and see where it leads. Does it lead to Donald Trump having to sit his butt in a jail cell? Well, first of all, the extended gag order was issued on Monday, and it includes a prohibition from Donald Trump talking about or posting about, among others, the judge's daughter. And then on Tuesday, Donald Trump reposted something from the Fox network, a segment that discussed the judge's daughter and included some of the same false information about her that Trump himself had posted previously before the extended gag order was issued. So I think we can check that one off. Donald Trump seems to have violated the gag order. But that doesn't answer the question entirely because there are a few sticking points. So let's work our way through those sticking points. The first sticking point is, did Donald Trump know the extended gag order had been issued? So you would think, well, in this day and age of social media and everything being instantly reported, of course he knew. And I'm sure he did, but of course he knew doesn't quite cut it. You have to make an evidentiary showing that the defendant knew that a modified or expanded gag order had been put in place. That's sort of the first matter of proof that the prosecutors will have to make out. And that gets a little bit sticky because Donald Trump may claim, perhaps not truthfully or accurately, I didn't know an expanded gag order had been put in place. And then the question becomes, well, didn't your lawyers advise you that you were now under this new prohibition, this new court order, expanding the contours of the gag order? And it gets a little bit dicey when you start to have to put attorneys in the chain of proof that would lead to the client perhaps suffering some consequences or being incriminated. It's not impossible. It just can present some challenges. If the only way to prove it is to get the attorneys to, for example, inform the court that, yes, we did tell our client or provide our client with a copy of the expanded gag order, therefore he did know the contours of it when he chose to violate it. Presents some challenges, not insurmountable challenges, but that's sticking point number one. Sticking point number two is that extra language that Judge Merchan included in the expanded gag order, that the defendant was prohibited from making statements about family members if those statements are made with the intent to materially interfere with or to cause others to materially interfere with counsel's or staff's work in the criminal case or with the knowledge that such interference is likely to result. That's a matter of proof. He tacked on that qualifier so the prosecutors would have to prove that Donald Trump reposted these prohibited statements about the judge's daughter with the intent to interfere with the work of the court staff or the prosecutors, or with the knowledge that it was likely to interfere. And I think that's a hurdle the prosecutors can overcome. I would actually point back to the gag order appellate argument that was made in the D.C. criminal case as some support for the conclusion that Donald Trump certainly had that knowledge and probably had that intent to interfere. You know, I was in court when that case was being argued before a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, and Trump was there. I was sitting about, 20, 25 feet behind him. And Donald Trump's lawyer started to try to make the point that, well, Your Honor, my client isn't responsible for what his supporters do once he posts something. And the judge basically cut him off and said, wait a minute. A clear pattern has emerged. Donald Trump posts somebody's name, some witness, some perceived enemy, and threats ensue. So Donald Trump obviously had knowledge that this was likely to interfere in the ongoing, court work or the prosecution. So I think that's a hurdle that can be overcome. The third sticking point is, where did Donald Trump commit this violation of the gag order? Because remember that provision of the New York law that we read a few minutes ago? If the contempt is committed in the immediate view and presence of the court, that really conjures up somebody who acts up in court and violates a lawful order of a judge, such that the contempt is committed in the judge's presence. This one wasn't. If it is, he may be punished summarily, which means the judge can literally bang his gavel and say, you're being held in contempt and here is the sanction. But if the violation is not committed in the judge's presence, the party charged must be notified of the accusation and have a reasonable time to make a defense. So friends, given that provision of the New York state law, there would have to be something of a mini criminal contempt trial to see if Donald Trump, in fact, violated the gag order, because the law provides that the defendant must be notified of the accusation and have a reasonable time to make a defense. Now, these mini contempt trials are few and far between, but frankly, they can be accomplished in an hour or two, or perhaps a morning session of court or an afternoon session. It's not a long, drawn-out process like a full criminal trial would be. But that brings us to the fourth sticking point. Let's assume that there is a mini criminal contempt trial held. Judge Merchan finds that Donald Trump, in fact, intentionally, knowingly, willfully violated the gag order. The question then turns to, will there be any actual consequences? Will there be some punishment of Donald Trump for violating the gag order? There has to be some form of punishment. And that punishment should involve not a $1,000 fine, but should involve time in a jail cell. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.